meeting.
Yeah, well, this guy's driving me nuts because he likes to eat anything. Paper clips is what he's after right now. So, come on, you idiot.
I'm not sure who's going to show up tonight.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Well,
Dick said he was tentative, depending on how he was feeling. Margaret wasn't quite sure; she might be a little late. I think Maureen said she was going to try to join, but didn't hear from Gwen. We have somebody who, a new person who's considering joining this group.
oh, good.
So
That's good. I was reading my what is it, the minutes here. Looks like I opened my mouth and didn't do anything. I can't even remember what I said here, but anyways.
yeah, you were thinking about developing some fact sheets.
Well, I had in the back of my mind of trying to create the cost of what all this what is it, rural living was costing us, but I kind of ran into a blank wall on that. I needed more information.
Well, the state has a lot of that information.
Does it?
Yeah, I mean they have a couple of websites they can go to, and it aggregates all the information on an annual basis and compares it to other towns throughout the state.
No, I mean rural. I was talking about the cost of rural character.
Yeah, well, but I mean that's what you get, that information. You can see, you know, cost of housing and all those types of things. You know.
Well, I wasn't going to attack it from that point. Actually, I was going to be a little weird, and I figured it might not be a smart thing to do. Weirdness is not something that we do well at here in Ashford. I did, however, was reading. I don't know. Have you ever? There is a what the hell's the name of it? That is a magazine that we get.
From Cetus?
The Yankee magazine. You ever read that?
I've seen it. I don't get it, but I've seen it. Yes.
Anyways, they had an article in there that was related to a trip to Arcadia National Forest.
Nice.
And they were talking about taking the path less traveled. In other words, instead of going to the park, they were referring to an area to the east, which would be down East Maine, in the town of Ellsworth.
Yep. Well.
Okay, but they were making a reference to the fact that that particular area, which is very similar to our attitude here of rural character, it is indeed rural, mixed with small towns. And it started talking about how since the days of Roosevelt, and I'm talking FDR, that area has been, you know, approached a number of times to have these grand schemes. In fact, they had one which they were going to make a flagpole that was 415 feet tall, that was going to have a park at its base and it was going to employ 5,000 people. Anyways, they talked about that and, and a number of schemes, if you will, over a period of 50, 60, 70 years that were going to bring that whole area into the modern era and create massive development. And as I read this thing, I was thinking of Ashford, anaerobic digester, wind towers, mega warehouses. I know this is right up your alley, but I was thinking all these things are one-shot greatness for the town of Ashford. The same as for this little community or series of communities and their moment of greatness. Of course, none of it ever transpired because the people didn't want it. Plain and simple, it didn't go anywhere. And I'm just wondering whether there's a parallel here. And at the end of the article, it said that the area has increased its value, tourism being one of them, but things should happen in small bites and small increments. That's what the people can live with. The big splash never works, at least for this group. And I see a parallel with Ashford, and I keep thinking about the fact that over your span of history and mine, we have seen these grand schemes, I call them that, and they do offer an awful lot of advantage to us in our growth, I guess, but they never seem to really attach. They don't become a part of us. I'm just wondering whether we're kind of thinking too great, whether we should be looking at, well, as I've said before, West Ashford as an area that could stand quite a bit of development, help us with our taxes. And I think we've talked a great deal about the wagon shed property and stuff like that. In other words, there are opportunities in Ashford that aren't immense, that aren't in megas, but they may be in hundreds or centimeters, I don't know, but they seem to be small efforts. And we never seem to do anything with those. We kind of poo-poo them as being too inconsequential, I guess is a good word.
Well, hold that thought, Raymond, and you can come back.
I'm not going to hold it. I'm only expressing it to you because on this latest foray, that you and I have been somewhat opposite, not in an argumentative sense, because I do agree that economic development in this town is worth considering and doing. It's just a matter of scope, I think, is the differences between us.
Yep. We have a quorum, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. I mean, I'm expecting maybe Margaret may come a little bit late. I haven't heard from Gwen. And we do have someone joining us this evening, Nora Gavlin. Did I say it right? You'll have to unmute yourself, Nora. You'll have to unmute yourself. But maybe Nora's approached us to, about possibly joining our group here. I did pass the information on to the first selectman, so they don't have a meeting tonight, so they'll be taking that under consideration here, Nora, soon, hopefully. But maybe before we start with anything, maybe you could like to introduce yourself, and we'll go around. If you don't know us, I'll introduce my. Well, why don't we introduce ourselves first, and then you can introduce yourself. I'm Mike Yantic. I'm kind of the head of this, or leader by default sometimes, of this group of Our Town, Our Future. We've been doing this probably for a good 10 years now, I think, darn close to it. And I've lived in the house here. We built our house probably close to 19 years ago. Owned the property since 1998. And I've also served on the Conservation Commission, on Economic Development Commission. So love Ashford, and we've tried to do a bunch of things to try to keep Ashford special, and that's why I've stuck with this group and all these cast of characters that we have with us this evening on the line as well. Right? I can call you guys cast of characters. Maybe we'll go. We got. I guess Ray, you're on. So why don't you go next?
Me? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Ray Fenn. I've been around this this town probably for better than 50 years, I guess, and a little bit before that. Seeing my folks had property up here for a number of years. Been with Michael on this effort, I guess, since it began. He and I both served on Conservation Commission. Been on wetlands, and I guess all I can say is I'm the mouthy one and a little bit of a curmudgeon. So I hand the microphone on to whoever wants to grab it from here.
I'm gonna go with Maureen.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I'm Maureen Hanning. I've been on the committee since just about the beginning. I'm originally from the Midwest, from southeastern Detroit area, But I've lived in New England since 1991, and I love it here. And I really enjoy being on this committee to help go forward with our town and find out what I can do to help also. So welcome to our committee.
Then we have Mr. Williams. Are you there, Richard?
Yep.
Welcome.
I've been on a number of committees, and I think along with Mike was one of the founding members of this steering committee. And I use the word steering committee. It's not a group that necessarily takes on projects and does it themselves, but it's really a group to try to foster others to take on projects. A good example, I think one of the better ones, is the fostering of the Arts Council that began within the Our Town, Our Future, and it's now a growing concern unto itself. I've been previously chairman of the Economic Development Commission. I presently serve on the board of planning and zoning. I also was the chair of the last plan of conservation and development that was done in 2015. I don't know if I'm a curmudgeon, but I have worked tirelessly to try to keep some things out that I didn't think would help the character of Ashford. In particular, we had a anaerobic digester or a trash sorting facility proposed for exit 72. And we managed to come up with a way that that could be shot down. We also had a large wind farm that was proposed for exit 72. And we looked into the rules within the FAA, and the height that they wanted to put the wind turbines in was higher than the FAA would allow them. So that got shut down. I am a strong proponent for finding a way to develop something at Exit 72 that would foster and improve our tax base in town. We have a very wanting tax base. We have one of the highest property tax rates for any comparable town in our area. Even Mansfield is quite a bit less than we are. But I'm hanging in with Mike on trying to steer some of the things that we've talked about doing on the Our Town, Our Future.
Thank you, Richard. And Margaret just joined us. Margaret, we have Nora Galvin who would like to join our committee. So we're just going around the screen here and introducing ourselves. So if you would like to do that, love to hear from you. Can you hear us, Margaret? We have two Margarets there, so can you hear us, Margaret?
One of them is not muted.
Yeah. Well, maybe we will come back to Margaret and you can hear us.
We also have a Jay Hendrick.
Yep. Okay. So we'll first go to Nora. If you'd like to say hello and introduce yourself.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Nora. I live on Barlow Mill Road, which most people don't know where it is. It's all the way at the end of Boston Hollow, and you make a left before you go into Eastford. We are out in the middle of nowhere and have terrible internet. We bought the house in 2018. We had been living in Bridgeport. We're not from Bridgeport, but my husband was working in New York. So we lived there for 13 years, and then we came to the opposite of Bridgeport. I'm also from the Midwest, Maureen. I'm from Cincinnati. but I've lived in New England since 1982. And I was just so interested in the whole sense of community that I felt during the hearings for the zoning amendment. And I thought that it would be great to be able to keep that sort of community going. And I thought this committee would be a way to do that.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you.
Nora, is your house, there aren't too many houses on Bowell Mill
There's
Road.
one,
Yeah,
there's
there's
one house.
and yours is kind of like the antique colonial reproduction.
Right, yes. Built in 2011.
Well, thank you very much. Welcome. Let me just get back to Margaret. Can you hear us? Would you like to unmute and introduce yourself? I'm not hearing you, Margaret. Maybe it's volume, I don't know. I mean, hopefully this may be our last Zoom for a while. We'll continue to have meetings. Oh, sorry, I can't activate my Zoom. I'll find another device. Okay. Okay. Well, then when Margaret comes on, we'll give her an opportunity to say hello. I know we have another person. Does Jay Hendrick want to say anything at this point? Or we have a input for public later on?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
I'm Joe Hendrick, and I also live in the replica antique house on Barlow Mill.
Hey. Welcome.
It's
So anyhow,
enough.
good. And again, I sent out the minutes. We haven't met in a while, obviously, because it's been in a holding pattern a little bit. See what we're going to do with our next leadership roundtable meeting. So everybody have a chance to look at the minutes for May 1st. Anybody have any comments or changes or anything? Do I have a motion to approve them? Okay, Maureen.
I move to approve the minutes from May.
Okay, thank you, Maureen. A second.
Second,
Thank you. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Hey,
aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Very good. Thank you. Any communications or announcements anybody has? Can you hear us now, Margaret? No.
No, Margaret is speaking, but we can't hear her, Mike.
No. Okay. Keep on
Maybe
trying.
a volume problem that she has, perchance?
I don't know. She's going to try a different device. Technology. It's great when it works.
yep. Margaret can also try calling in at the phone number that's on the agenda.
Yes. We do that. Okay, we'll move along here. The old business, the leadership meeting that we've been talking about for some time to follow up last fall's leadership. I've had some communication with both Bill Folletti and Jeff Silversmith, and I think the consensus is that a lot of things that we had came up in the last meeting and are kind of driven by items that are contained or could be contained in the plan of conservation development. And rather than try to supersede anything they may be considering doing, as we're all aware, the POCD is coming up for update here by 2025, which means planning and zoning is going to start getting ready to undertake that activity. I know the last meeting P&Z had, and Richard, you can kind of correct me if I'm wrong, but there was some discussion on it. And I know that in talking with Jeff Silversmith, that Conservation Commission was looking at doing a survey, and maybe one similar to the one that was done in 2005 for the Plan of Conservation Development. And so I think Jeff was considering working with the Conservation Commission to gather a new survey, a town-wide survey, that could kind of be a springboard for generating some public input for the update of the plan of conservation development. I know that Jeff does have some people that step forward to volunteer for that undertaking, as we know that it takes a lot of time and effort. It's not something that's going to get done in a month or a couple of months. It's going to be a year-long effort. And critical to it, I think that we've seen a lot of energy generated this past year, which is great. That's one thing we like to see is get more input from the public so that the ship can be guided in the direction that everybody feels fit. So I think the bottom line here, and again, talking with Bill Folletti as well, he kind of feels the same way, that he certainly wants to support, and he still would like to have a leadership meeting, even maybe in the spring, if it's something that takes a different bend, maybe taking up some items in the plan of conservation development that we'd like to kind of begin to facilitate more activities on. But he certainly wants to support planning and zoning's update and that effort to get public input. And like I said, if the survey that was done, I know back in 2005, generated a lot of good kind of foundation for that to be done. So if they use that blueprint and get it going here by the end of the year, and then start meeting, and then as they had last time around, getting input from all the boards and commissions and the public, then certainly the update can provide a plan of conservation development that can be a great guiding document for the future. And Nora, I don't know how much you've learned about the plan of conservation development, but in one sense, it's we kind of view it here as kind of like the business plan for the community, in a sense. If you look at the chapters and everything in there, it contains everything that touches the life of residents, the physical structures and land masses of the community. So it offers a lot of great ideas. And I think the one thing that's unique to Ashford, in my opinion, because I grew up in South Windsor, and I actually worked in South Windsor, and that's become quite the mega center of all kinds of things these days. And you have to have some guiding principles and things that you can do. And I think what the current plan of conservation development, if we look at the things that have been actually accomplished, it's kind of really significant and something that the community should be proud of, because a lot of things have been actually undertaken, either are in progress or that have actually been completed, for improving the quality of life and all those things that are mentioned in that. So I think that looking at it as a business plan, and certainly by state statute, plan of conservation, planning and zoning commission is the one that has to lead that initiative, but it has input from all sectors, everybody that lives and works and has any interest in the community as well. And actually even the state too gets a kind of look-see, and then the regional planning agency gets a little look-see too. But so I think that's a critical document, a critical effort. And I think everybody agrees that if we can get the kind of outpouring that was came about as a result of the text amendment and get people energized and interested, that'd be great. I mean, you're the only one, Nora, to your credit, that stepped forward. We've on our meetings and during other meetings, and even in a lot of our other public entities, we've tried to see some of the people that have been out there step forward during that process and try to get them engaged in the town, not just for one singular item, but I mean, you can see how important a plan of conservation development is to kind of visualizing, the future of the community, we don't want to see people that not be involved, and all of a sudden something is developed and they don't like the way it is. There's an opportunity for this public process to really get the best ideas and the majority feeling of the community into something that can be used and moving forward to make the town what everybody wants it to be. And
yeah, Mike, if I can jump in,
sure.
Because I talked at some length at the last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. The number one thing that Jeff needs to identify is who is going to lead this development. Having done it, back in 2015, without someone that's the driving force, nothing's going to happen. And I strongly object to the fact if we have Mike D'Amato as a consultant becoming the de facto lead of this, that would not be the right thing for the town. So far, no one has stepped up to lead this. Once the lead of that would be, this is basically the person that organizes it. And it's not that hard to organize the plan of conservation and development. You can pretty much take the outline of the one done in 2015 and use that as the skeletal framework for what will be done for the next one to 2025. There might be a new section or two if there's been some major changes in the town, but you know, you're going to have the sections that deal with conservation, agricultural, economic development, housing, the history of the town. And if you just go through the table of contents of the existing plan of conservation development, which is available on the town website. And
thank you, Dick. Yeah, we realize that. I just wanted to kind of give a general background that because obviously our group has kind of, to some degree, fed off some of the things that have been identified in that document, but obviously we've done other things above and beyond, and that are now kind of building blocks to it as well. But you know, our role is, you know, I think essentially the mission of our group, Nora, that, you know, we really are appointed by the Board of Selectmen. We're really here to facilitate things that the Board of Selectmen would like us to do, and facilitate some things that are an outgrowth of the POCD, and that's why I kind of mentioned it. But again, bottom line, it looks like you know, we're going to kind of have to take a step back relative to doing our leadership meeting, because it would kind of I think it's important to get whatever they're going to do for the public involvement and all that they do it with that intent as the main part of it. Because if we went ahead with ours, and you know, I think there'd be a lot of people that thought that even, you know, that maybe misinformed, that thinking that we're working on it. We as the Icon of Future are not per se, but so I think letting the Planning and Zoning Commission figure out when they're going to do their process here is important, and kind of like that.
And Mike, sorry to dwell on process, but it's process that'll get this thing done. It is the responsibility of the Planning and Zoning Commission to have it published.
Right.
It's not an item that is brought to a vote of the town to accept or reject. It comes forth to the Planning and Zoning Commission for their input and comments. There will be a public hearing, like there's been for other items, where the public can look at the draft and make comments on it. Ideally, there should be one or more people in each of the sections making the contributions to it. We had some of the sections that came together rather nicely. We had other sections last time that was like pulling hen's teeth. The Historical Commission, Maureen, you can probably identify with this since you were on the Historical Commission at the time. You know, they missed a lot of the deadlines and then came up with things, you know, after the fact. Same thing with the Clean Energy Task Force. They eventually got their things in, but by contrast, the input from agriculture, conservation, the economic development, and several others of the commissions were very timely and comprehensive. Probably conservation was probably the most comprehensive of all of the ones that were put in. There's
Dick,
yep.
can I ask you a question, Dick? Is the Eastern Connecticut Council of Governments going to be excluded from this year's effort?
Mike D'Amato tells me that he can get a hold of all of the maps and resources that John Filchek had done before. And to my knowledge, John Filchek is not personally involved, and he did have a couple young people that were involved at various times and did help a lot with the writing. No
Well,
longer with,
I'm just saying that the actual package, the physical assembly, if you will, not so much the, the content, but the physical assembly of the whole package was really something that one of the members of the Eastern Council of Governments put together. I'm trying to think of, there was a guy and a young lady involved, and
right.
I can't remember their names.
And they're both not with NECOG any longer.
I would suspect they're not, but I was just wondering, when you said you're looking, you were looking for someone to step up in a sort of a lead capacity. As it turned out, it was yourself that took a great deal of the responsibility, but there was also a considerable amount of input from from the council. So
yeah,
you're saying that that's not going to happen this year, is what you're
no,
telling me.
just as an aside, it took us 6 months to finally get the actual copy of the POCD, not a physical hard copy, from John Filchek. He resisted hand and teeth of giving that to the town, even though the town paid for it.
No, I remember the issue, but
Yeah,
again,
and
it was simply a question, Dick. I wasn't.
I'm not the one to make the answer, but if I'm asked for my opinion, I would say NECOG is not going to do one damn thing on this. If Mike D'Amato can do what he says he can do, I would vote to have his group generate all the charts and figures.
And what is his group? Help me out here.
He's got he and a couple of the guys have formed a land use consulting group. He's also the zoning enforcement officer for the town.
Okay.
And
all right, I knew he was that, but that's why I asked the question. I was wondering what his capacity beyond that gave him the, how would you say, the credentials.
Well, yeah, he tells me that he has access to all of the databases that Filchek had. So, the key things is to be able to, get the charts of the wetlands, the charts of the estuaries and the watersheds and things like that, the ledge. There's an awful lot of physical data that needs to be headed in and updated.
Okay.
And
so
Mike tells me.
You're saying that he is really a base resource for some of the statistics and so forth, but you're not considering him as the lead person to carry this thing on to.
He's a staff person, basically.
He's a staff person, and
okay.
He's acting like he's going to act like NECOG.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just want to have an understanding, Dick. Thank you.
And
can
someone
you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can, Margaret.
Hi, and I'm sorry for that. Yeah, his name of his company is Tai Chi Planning and Policy Group. So, he is in this function for the town of Mansfield, but he does work with this planning group. So I would think that they, would have some good credentials to be able to help us on this journey.
Okay. Thanks, Margaret.
So to summarize, Richard, that at this point, planning and zoning is going to have to determine who they want to lead it, like you led it the last time, and then get the other members that'll help guide it, and then you set up the whole schedule of how you're going to proceed with basically updating the sections and whatever the state has do for new requirements, and then have those groups come in and provide information, and then get the public hearing and go through that process and get it submitted by January of 2025.
And I should say a large portion of the writing of the grunt work stuff was also done by the NECOG fellow, but Bill Darcy, who is retired up to New Hampshire these days, was also instrumental in adding a lot of the verbiage into the plan.
So that'll be determined here hopefully soon, I think. And
Yep.
my short conversation with Jeff Silversmith was that, you know, they were going to try to work towards that. And I still have to get back in touch with them. Kind of got cut off. But I think that their intent is to get that going here fairly soon. So,
Yeah, and
So
Go
can
ahead,
I
go
ask
ahead.
a question?
Sure.
So I had an email as EDC chair today from Loretta Roble. And she says the Conservation Commission has volunteered to write a preliminary survey to help with the 2025 POCD. A survey was done in 2005 before that POCD, and it proved to be helpful. We're working on that at our next Conservation Commission meeting in, she says April 25th. She probably means September. We are asking the EDC, Ag Commission, and Education Committee, sort of being Board of Ed, to submit a few questions to us in their way of expertise so that our survey will reflect all areas of concern. So is this news to everybody that the Conservation Commission is taking it upon themselves to do this survey? I mean, maybe the
They're not taking it on upon themselves. They did talk with Jeff Silversmith. I talked with him, and he said that they're going to work with
Okay,
them. They're going to do some of the legwork. So they're basically helping to get some of the stuff together. It'll obviously be approved by planning and zoning before it goes
Yep.
out. But
Okay,
they're
great.
kind of taking the lead to try to begin to pull that information together and get that out probably sooner rather than later to get kind of the foundation of this POCD going.
So a thought that I had pertaining to that, right, is if a few different commissions in Our Town, Our Future could probably submit a few questions ourselves. If we contributed to that and that survey came out, that would be an interesting basis for a leadership meeting, right? So to take the POCD results from the survey and to just sort of have a public forum led by them and Our Town, Our Future about what did this survey tell us, and therefore where should we go with this? But I don't mean to be presumptuous, stepping on their toes, but I can see, to your point, Mike, about not wanting to confuse the public about who's taking the lead here.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's something that Jeff and P&Z is gonna have to determine and how they want to do that. That to me would be a great thing to do as far as soliciting further public input. But they got to be able to how they're going to meld that into their process and ultimately write that into the POCD is kind of the magic of it all.
yeah, Loretta was very proactive on the last one, and she had basically volunteered not to just do it for conservation, but do it for all various commissions. And I should add that the person that physically leads the POCD does not necessarily have to be a member of a Planning and Zoning Commission. I was the chair of the EDC at the time when I first stepped up to that, and later ran for a position on planning and zoning. But when I was working on it the first time around, was not a member of planning and zoning.
Right. So again, just to recap that section about the leadership meeting, I think we're kind of on a pause, awaiting what planning and zoning ultimately wants to do. To be of service in case like what you just said, Margaret, that they want us to help facilitate a meeting around either survey or generating some further public input to the process. And likewise, I think Bill Folletti said the same thing. Their board of selectmen are poised to help in any way they can, and because it's important to the community, obviously. We all have a vested interest. So Margaret, anybody else have any comments on that before I?
The only other thing
I have
Go ahead, Nora. Go ahead, Nora.
I have been hearing the term forum, and that the Our Town, Our Future it has done or might do a forum in the fall, and I'm wondering if that's the same thing as the leadership committee. Correct. Or this leadership meeting you're talking about.
Yes, it
okay.
is.
Because some of the talk that I've heard is that a good topic for such a discussion would be conservation and development, how to balance them.
Right, and I think that the crossroads here is that the POCD is so intimate with that conversation that I think that to not have that as part of the input to that POCD would be a disservice. I think to people. I think in a sense that people are going to come out to a meeting with an expectation, and that what they're talking about and the input they're providing is going somewhere. And I think we want to do that in the context that it's part of the POCD. I think that's what I guess I'm saying, that that's at least what the kind of conclusion I've come to in talking with Jeff Silversmith and Bill Folletti, is that rather than do something like that, is to really have that as part of that an open forum discussion for the POCD input. I mean, because there's so many of these things. Because we've talked, and I don't want to get sidetracked too much here, but we've talked about Kettle Rock's still out there. There's a grant and there's a whole public process to what can be done with that. There's a lot of those that are still out there that offer a public forum and could be a whole meeting unto themselves. And not that is the situation, because I know Loretta was looking at possibly doing something like that. But I think it'd be, I guess, from talking to Jeff and Bill, that'd be probably best served if that discussion becomes part of the POCD, so they can get integrated into that document moving forward. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, there's one other
Yes.
important point to bring up. It is a legal requirement that the town submits the POCD by a certain date in 2025. We had to get an extension because we were late in 2015, because we had a lot of people talk, but no one doing much of anything. And that's kind of how I got involved. And I think I said it once before, I'll say it one more time. Whoever leads this does not have to be a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission. It can be anyone else who is preferably on a commission or active within the commissions, because whoever leads it needs to know their way around all the various structures and people within the town in order to draw around everything.
Hey, Richard, don't take this wrong, but this magic person that pops up taking on this role, what would be their procedure for outside of planning and zoning? What would be the procedure for them being involved or offering their services?
Well,
And I'm not referring to myself or anybody else. I'm just saying what you've done it.
okay.
And you've done it outside planning and zoning, as you pointed out. What were the steps that got you into that role?
Well, basically, I saw that there was a lot of hand waving with no progress being made, and stepped up and volunteered to take the lead on organizing it. And I
Well,
do.
let's hope that this is not a moment of desperation like you faced. Let's say this is in a normal course of events.
Well, that's what I told Jeff. I said, Jeff, your number one priority is not to organize a whole bunch of forums and leadership things. You need to identify someone who is going to take the leadership role on pulling this thing together. And to date, he's not done that yet.
Okay.
So, Margaret, now we can hear you and see you. Would you like to introduce yourself to Nora?
Well, actually, I
Maybe
met Nora
fine.
at the wine tasting the other day, and I was introduced to her that she was interested in coming to Our Town, Our Future. So she and I have actually met face to face.
There you go.
So welcome aboard, Nora. We really appreciate your interest in this. I have been on the Economic Development Commission for 20 plus years at this point. As you know, I'm a business owner here in Ashford, so I bring that point of view. And I just really, I used to be active with the PTO when my kids were in school. I've really tried to be an active part of the community, and I feel like Our Town, Our Future is a great way to continue that, kind of high level, looking at all the opportunities and trying to make connections and build community here.
Thank you. So anybody else have any last thoughts on the leadership meeting item? Okay. Moving on to the old business, the Ashford citizen update. I did provide updates to the citizen for part of the summer. I haven't put anything in there lately, and not sure if anybody has anything they'd like to suggest or do for that at this point. Like I said, I don't want to step on any toes with this next meeting type thing, so I'm a little hesitant to put anything into the citizen. Let the P&Z take care of that. Any thoughts? It's fair enough.
Mike, one thought, have we expended the items that we had agreed to discuss in the Ashford citizens related to that
I think there was
last
actually
meeting?
no. Truthfully, I think the last one was not done. I think we did all but the last one. I think the last one was on getting more youth and volunteers involved. Maybe we could do an article on that. Somebody like to do it?
Yeah, I think we had one of the very first kickoff meetings that we had for Our Town, Our Future, and we broke off into half a dozen working groups, and there were people that had never ever shown up for a meeting such as that, and the core group facilitated it, but I think we probably had 35 people participate. Doing something like that again, because at present we don't have any projects that are actively going anywhere. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's some that are still kind of floating out there. They're kind of out of our hands at this point. You know, the RSA work that we did for the 7444 corridor, there's still some outstanding issues there with the Department of Transportation. But again, those are outside of our bailiwick. It's really in the Board of Selectmen's hands at this point. And then the only other thing, so at the May meeting, Mr. Fenn had a couple ideas on some things to possibly look at. Yeah, and there's a few other older projects that are out there. The communication one kind of has been kicked around a number of times, but yeah, other than that, you're correct.
Well, that one is, I think, kind of put to bed with the push. That if you're interested in topics A, B, and C, you can sign up and you'll get an email push when something comes up on those topics. So I think that probably addresses a lot of the communications. But one of the things that never was realized, Doug Jenny's wife, I can't think of her name offhand, but she had volunteered at one of our early meetings to help on writing grants, and she actually had an experience in doing that. That would be an important thing to go the next step on some of these things. And having a meeting such as that first one, and that's a little different than the leadership meeting you're talking about. The leadership meeting you're talking about is getting all the stakeholders together. That meeting was open to anyone that wanted to get involved, and we probably had 50% of people from commissions and office holders, etc. And there was at least the other half were made up of people that had never come to a town meeting.
So what are you suggesting, Richard?
Well, if we really don't have an active slate of new projects for this group to foster, and the POCD is a good thing, but unless someone here wants to take the lead on that, and I know it's not me, I'm more than willing to give advice. I think, Mike, you said that you weren't that anxious to step into that role.
No.
So I'm not sure if anyone else here is, but I don't think the POCD would be the main focus for this group right now. That's until someone is named to head it up and organize it, and that would come out of the, you know, planning and zoning. It would be good if we could identify other projects. One of the ones that come to mind was and the old gas station still hasn't gone anywhere, but it at least is not the eyesore that it was, previously with the local artists all getting together and doing the caricature painting of it. I could think there could be some other things like that that would benefit the town. That we
I
might
think you're
have.
right, Richard. I think we've spent quite a bit of our energy on trying to establish that leadership conference, and I think Mike would agree that he's been doing his best there. But there hasn't been an awful lot of discussion about considering other projects. They've been kind of put on the back burner if there has been. So I think you're right that we could take some time and see what's available, in our minds. There are some things that we could do, and we not do, but rather generate.
Yeah, well, as I recall, that we got a lot of ideas from the people that came to that meeting that were not members of commissions or anything like that. And the whole idea of this Our Town, Our Future is to try to get people that haven't been active in the town to step up and do things.
Agreed.
So, Dick, what was that meeting again? And are there documents from it that list these projects that you're talking about?
Yes, is the answer.
I think, Mike, did you or Margaret take the lead as far as pulling all those together?
Well, I mean, you're talking about some of the first meetings 10 years ago. We have some of those documents, but the last meeting we had, those ideas that came out were pretty much following major topics of the POC. They weren't necessarily project specific, I don't think so. Margaret, you wanted to say something?
Well, I'm just trying to think, other projects that kind of bubbled up. The communications topic was one of them. The arts, people who were like-minded with arts, right? And that's burgeoned into this, amazing Ashford Area Arts Council that's, got like 65 members. I mean, that's really taken off. Another one that I recall was this notion of making us a bicycle, sort of a bicycle friendly community, and how could we kind of, lure and market our bicycle roads and trails as, from a recreation perspective, and make some of them safer. So there was definitely a few people interested in that. And then the whole history aspect, the fact that we have such a rich historical, just so much has gone on here, and there's a lot of rich history. I think that we're seeing with the election, new election of officers, and they have got some great things planned. In fact, I believe they're doing a cemetery tour of one of their cemeteries this fall. They didn't get in time for Walktober, but they're kind of doing it on their own and planning to promote it themselves. And the idea of kind of doing some, historic cemeteries around town and focusing on those. They're also doing this poster, right, of historic places, and planning to host a kickoff, sort of an unveiling of this poster and selling prints in time for the holidays. So I think we are seeing that the Historical Society is kind of gaining some steam. So one thing is, how does Our Town, Our Future support their initiatives and, contribute some ideas to that?
Yeah, Margaret, isn't Gina Burnham kind of risen up to take
Yep,
some
he
more?
was elected president. Yep.
Good.
Yeah, so they've got a lot of things planned. She came over and chatted with Lou and I one day, and they've got a lot of things up their sleeve around history stuff, and so that's encouraging because I know that that was an area of opportunity that we'd identified. Does anybody remember any of the others?
Well, one of the perennial things that EDC has tried to do, and we've even had at some of the business fairs, get people more involved in what they would like to see in the town. It's amazing to me that we have such a dearth of, we've literally have 0 restaurants in town. The Wooden Spoon, I'm not sure what their hours are, but every time I go by there, they're closed.
Well, I feel like that's something that EDC needs to focus on. I mean, I really do feel that that's business development. I realize it's service, it's one service of many that people are looking for. I think it's challenging to ask people what kinds of services would you like to see, because I don't feel like we have a great mechanism for going out and soliciting them at this point and offering them much. But I mean, everybody, yeah, wants more restaurants, wants more service, but I don't know if that's in our town, our future focus. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but
I know we've tried to do it within the EDC multiple times, and it's been a frustrating thing. I can think the number of times that Mike, you've reached out to the owners of the old sneakers place, and they seem to be fat, dumb, and happy with the Spectrum Communications paying the
well,
rent.
we're still working with them, Dick. That's not a done deal. So that's come alive again, and we're going to try to give them some support in soliciting restaurants there. So,
And we still have the town-owned property on the corner of going down to the Ashford Park.
yep. And we have raised that with the Board of Selectmen. We're going to be addressing that at next week's meeting about the whole Moore property piece. So,
Yeah,
I feel, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just feel like the nature of what the Our Town, Our Future stuff maybe needs to focus on is what are those things that people feel would build community here, and what in knitting together elements that commissions are not assigned to do per se.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I was thinking of one of the outcomes of the leadership meeting we had several years ago, right before the pandemic, was kind of the synergy that developed between a number of nonprofits and some other churches and things in the community, whereby there was an outreach to the town, and Conroy there, the Salvation Army group, invited the community in for a fishing derby, and I think they had like a little picnic, and so that was one of the outgrowths of what you're talking about, I think, Margaret, where things that aren't necessarily a property that you want to develop, or a bike path that you need to develop. It's really bringing the spirit of service back and integrating that and getting people to just know who's who in town, and with cross purposes and developing some opportunities. And I think that's another example of what that did. It just, again, my question to the group is, it's kind of like the timing of all this. It's, I've seen when we have these meetings that people come out to them with expectations of specific, special interests that they have. And I think in light of what's coming on the horizon with the POCD, and I know I'm going back to that, but I don't want to overshadow or confuse that part of it. I think there's still an opportunity to have one of these, we called them the stakeholder meetings back in the day, that people can come in and talk about certain things that they want to kind of work on, so to speak. But I'm not sure whether that timing would serve us a purpose now, unless we had a list of things that we knew that people would want to buy into and work on, so to speak. Or I don't know. I'm kind of in a little bit of a fog with all of it at this point, because of the timing of everything.
Yeah, rather than trying to define what the topic should be, I think if we could kind of reach out to the grassroots of people that haven't been involved before and get them to come out to a meeting like we had 10 years ago, where, they brainstormed what they thought the town should be and the projects that they would like to see, happen in town. We're probably ripe to doing that. And that is not necessarily the same thing as the POCD.
Right. Well, I would just share with you personally. I've done that several times now. Most of it's been an email outreach with kind of, hoping people will respond. And I even called up a few places or trying to find out who's the head of one of the like Boy Scouts or whatever. And it's a lot of legwork. And I'll be honest with you, the success rate that I found was not very, very good. I think I don't know what it is. It's kind of like we have to find that spark, that thing that's going to make everybody say, I can't miss that meeting. I want to go there, and I've got to go there. And I don't know what that is right now. I think the world's just saturated with so much stuff now that unless you make it something that it's what's in it for them to come, it's hard to get those groups energized to come out. That's just what I found in doing it. I don't know whether there's another way to do it.
Well, what we had done is we'd put out a call in a general sense. This is when we were first introducing the concept of the Our Town, Our Future. Do you care about what happens in your community? Come out and spend a couple hours and brainstorm with other people in the community. And it doesn't need to be someone from Camp Country or Gene Norcross or anything like that. It could just be some young people. And I wish I could one of the persons that came out at that time was Gina Burnham, Jesse Burnham's wife, and she ended up becoming more active in the Historical Society as a result. And then horrible at my names, but Doug Jenny's wife, I can't think of her name, but she had actually volunteered, to do some things in terms of grant writing. And there was ideas that came up, and granted, we had some of the same ones that came up every time, but we need ideas from places other than the folks that have been doing this for 25, 30 years.
To Mike's
I'd
point,
like to-
though, oh, go ahead, Nora.
I was going to say, I think we have a very hot topic, which generated an immense reaction from the community. And that was the question about what would happen to the IID zone. And I think it's fundamental to the identity of Ashford. And I think having a meeting to get input from the public, and I don't think it should be a free-for-all. I think perhaps it should be something like a panel discussion, maybe, that's something controlled. But this question of conservation versus development is huge. And we saw how many hundreds of people attended the P&Z meetings on Zoom, how many hundreds of letters were written to the commission in testimony. People are very passionate about this. And I do think that, as Margaret said, the aspect of community is very important with that. And I think people were looking for a way to get together and talk about that. And there was no forum for that. And I think that that's something that this group could provide.
My only question, again, having lived and worked in the public service for 40 years, is that if you have people come out for something like that, they all come with an expectation. Okay, what my input's going to do, and what does it mean? Where does it go from there? And like I said, I'm not sure this group can offer a remedy for that, so to speak. I mean, I think certainly it's a topic, and I think that topic is the one that's going to provide input to the POCD moving forward. Like I said, even if EDC and conservation held a forum like that, where does it go? It really goes to the POCD, because that's the document, that's the game plan, so to speak, that kind of drives the bus for the community in a sense. So I mean, like I said,
Sure.
I wouldn't want to hold a meeting with have all these people come out. We could serve refreshments and things, but like every meeting we've had, people have an expectation. Okay, what does my input mean, and where does it go? And I'm not sure we could solve that for them with that kind of meeting. I mean, it'd be nice to hear everybody's opinion, but what is that? We hear that when you go talk to your neighbor, you can hear the opinion. It's the same kind of thing. So I don't know. That's what I'm struggling with, truthfully. I just
Right, I can understand that because, yeah, I mean, our town, our future, though, as a committee of the town, has the ability to make input into the POCD. Is that not correct? And I
Yes.
guess my point is that if we can have some kind of a forum or community discussion where we get some kind of input, some kind of measurable input from people, we can present that as a part of the plan of conservation and development. I don't know how the thing would be organized. I'm the first to admit that, but I do feel that there was enough excitement on the part of people in the town on that one issue that it's something we should take advantage of. And perhaps it could be a broader topic, more individual things to discuss. But I think it's just something we should keep considering.
Well, hopefully, I'm hopeful that this survey that they're putting out maybe have an opportunity to begin to delve into that question and then getting that feedback. And I think that's one that hopefully even surveys sometimes don't get the feedback they want. So, but I think I know I personally agree, but I think I'm just concerned about having people be disappointed to come to a meeting and say, okay, now what? Where do we go with this? What do we do with it? And if you don't have it quantified and get it down so that it can be put into some kind of document and quantified, then you're just going to have a bunch of opinions and stuff, and everybody's going to end up at the same spot they started off with. That's what I struggle with.
Michael, I've listened to Nora's comments, and if I understood you correctly, you're saying that the leadership conference should not conflict with the work that's being done on POCD. In other words, it shouldn't be in lieu of, it shouldn't be a competitor, and therefore the POCD efforts should prevail or take precedence. And I agree with that. But I'm just wondering if you couldn't structure a leadership meeting to go along with pretty much what Nora is saying, and that is specifically to develop those input items for the POCD conference itself. In other words, rather than having it an open, free for all, so to speak, what your ideas are in general, maybe it could be structured in order to support the plan of conservation and development effort.
That's kind of interesting, Ray. It's like take the different parts of the POCD, the ag part, the development part, the conservation part, the history part.
Right.
Take the table of contents, bust it up, and then break people into small groups. So it's small group discussion as opposed to, kind of soapboxing in front of a huge group. so everybody can say what they want to say, and then, move them around from kind of topic to topic.
It could be a
Um,
series of meetings, Margaret, and it doesn't have to be a single leadership meeting. It could be if you will, a spin-off, or even coincide with the, our town, our futures meetings themselves, where we bring outside people in specifically for that meeting on whether it be conservation or development, or whether it's be on education or whatever. We could break it up into a series of OTOF meetings themselves. Now we have these meetings every month, and sometimes, the end result is, without conclusion. Here's an opportunity maybe to take Nora's idea and say, let's zero in on an OTOF meeting specifically on a particular topic with outside people, and we would simply act as kind of a leadership role, so that it doesn't get out of hand. In other words, it has structure,
Yeah,
and then present the results of that to your conservation and POCD.
yeah, that could be step 2 of what Loretta is going to do with the survey.
The survey, quite frankly, the survey is a free-for-all. I know you're going to have specific questions, but I'm not terribly sure the survey is going to be as conclusive as it would be if you had a cluster of people that are geared to a specific topic, Richard.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
that's
the
a whole
only
it's a little different concept. I'm sorry.
the only thing that I worry about is if you put together a group to talk about what should be done at exit 72, and that group is going to come up with a series of what they think should be done, and they're going to also feel that they're empowered to do that. That's not necessarily the way that things like that work.
I wouldn't do that. You see, I wouldn't have exit 72 as an issue. But what I would have is how we're going to make a balance between, if you will, conserving the essence of this town and the needed development in order to pay the bloody taxes. I
Yeah.
would put it a little differently. I don't think I can dictate how a privately owned piece of property is going to be developed. That's not going to work. And if that's what your concern is, I would agree with you.
To paraphrase the guy that owns the property, says, if you're so damn determined to tell me what I can and cannot do, why don't you simply buy it from me?
Yeah, there you go. You got a point. I'm
Yep.
not talking about that. I'm saying that the background as far as exit 72 is concerned is we have opposing views as to what development means and what the conservation of this of the land means. I think those are the subjects you want to address, not what you want to do with a specific piece of property. That's just not fair game for the people that own it.
Well,
So what if taking all those thoughts in concert here, what if we offered to planning and zoning that we would provide a public forum, maybe on our town of future meeting dates, for each of those 7 items that are identified in the POCD, to start gathering some information.
Right.
Certainly the thing I mean, that's kind of along what you're all kind of talking about. I think the thing that the challenge still remains, though, that you have to have somebody who leads those conversations. You have to have it structured so that you're getting just not, a mass of scattered input. It's got to be set up so that you're getting, positive input. And maybe that those meetings can take place after we've already done the survey information, so that could be part of at least some of the information that's looked at along with the existing POCD. And I don't know, that's something I think, again, that P&Z is going to have to outline that schedule of events. But you can already see that if we have 7 topics and they're once a month, at 7 months, and that the thing is due in 15 months, 14 months. It's a lot of work to be done.
Well, we're supposed to be, the meaning of OTOF is, is to energize and to produce information, if you will, or to incite. That's a good word. I like that one. That's
Yeah.
that's certainly a subject that's in vogue right now. I mean, if that's what we're supposed to do, maybe that's what we should be doing, on these particular subjects. Certainly the ones that are reflected in the plan of conservation and development. That would be a good way to control it as well, because they would be isolated meetings on a particular subject, and the rules, okay, would be obvious ones. People shouldn't get too carried away. But again, OTOF would control the meeting, control it from the point of view of time and allowing everybody to have their say, things like that.
What are the thoughts on that? I mean, something that I can go back and have a conversation with Jeff, and maybe this will be an impetus to kind of get that schedule of events going. And I mean, maybe that could be our purpose, because it's part of our mission in a sense, and it could be helping them with the process to some degree, but at least organizing the public input meetings.
Or how would you feel about this? Is this quote, seeing that you kind of incited this conversation here? Is this along the lines that you might be thinking of?
Yes, definitely. And I agree with something you said earlier, Ray, and that is that the survey is very different from this kind of meeting. And I think we could very well get two completely separate groups involved that way. Some people really have to be in person to talk. Other people don't want to be in person to make their input. I think there's plenty of room for both of these methods of getting the community to communicate what it is what their vision is.
No, you're absolutely right, Nora. I'm involved right now with some strategic planning in Mansfield, and they're doing it all, right? They did an online survey, they did an in-person meeting, they're doing intercepts one-on-one, they're doing small, focus groups by invitation. You got to get a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. So, and you could even offer, and maybe D'Amato can help us with this piece, because you can do these Zoom meetings with breakout rooms, so you could have, 40 people who couldn't come out to an in-person meeting where, you could introduce it and then randomly, scatter folks into smaller breakout rooms and even do some of that input virtually if we really wanted to get fancy. But I think it's an interesting approach, and you're right, Mike, it could be a good way for us to offer to be of some assistance in in creating this momentum in the information.
Back to kind of what Mike said too, though, I would like to make sure that everyone felt that they were heard and we were following up on things. One of the big issues when we had our group meeting was the senior citizen housing, what an issue that was. And so many people in apartments around here were having terrible problems. Was that ever addressed? I mean, did we wrote it down and everything, but did we pass it along? I don't know. Maybe we did, and I'm just not aware. But those were real big concerns. We had good ideas with that, and where did it go? I don't know. So what I'm saying is that if someone comes out and tells the committee, I'm concerned about this problem, we want to make sure that it was addressed or we heard them.
But it's not our job to address it. It's our job to say, okay, you 6 people who really are worried about this, can you dig into this and see what you can, what's the best way for us to approach it?
Did we do that? Did we direct somebody to take ownership of it?
I can tell you that the people that were involved in that have the information from that one meeting you're talking about.
Great. That's good.
So whether anything happened, I don't know. I haven't seen as much talked about on social media about it lately, but
Right.
So,
But to
maybe,
address that, uh, there is a draft plan of affordable housing which addresses the seniors. I tried to put some data as to the constraints that the town of Ashford faces in terms of affordable housing. Uh, the commission did not want to include all that data, but frankly, that's probably a good place to put it in the POCD. You know, the point I was trying to make at that meeting is that we definitely need affordable housing, but we have considerable constraints in terms of what we can and cannot do, just in terms of the land area of the town.
Well, there were recommendations for that though, with more regulation from the town. It wasn't just affordable housing, it was people who, there's a monopoly on the apartments and people have so many concerns that weren't being addressed. So the suggestion was at our meeting was more licensing, more control. I mean, we can't, people own property, we can't tell them what to do with it, but we can watch what they're doing. So that's what I was just concerned about, whether or not that was passed on.
it's been discussed.
Okay, good.
It's been discussed, but it's not, none of that information is in the current plan of
Right.
in the current affordable housing. Pretty much what is in this is one of these things where we're required to put forth a plan. If we don't, we lose out on grants. Mike Diamato wrote the plan, and he took the plan that he wrote for Union and Chaplin and I don't know how many other towns, and simply modified it with the demographics for Ashford. And it was felt that, okay, this is enough to get by with what's required, but it didn't really come up with any actionable things to try to address the issues you're talking about,
I
Maureen.
wasn't really talking though about the POCD. I was talking about hardcore things we could do, not put in a plan or say we're going to do someday, but you know, if things
Actual
we could
items. you know.
actually do to
Yeah.
regulate, to watch what's going on, that you don't need to write a plan for that. We could, those are things we could actually do. And then I think the people that shared those concerns would feel we were listening. And
Yeah.
that's how you get people involved.
I
Yeah.
think, what's her name, Melissa McCullough at Town Hall, met with many of the renters from these
Good.
places, over the summer. I don't recall seeing the outcome of that meeting, but they are, joining together.
But she
to
met with them,
try
that's great.
Put some, yeah, to try to put some pressure, on the landlords.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, so maybe just
I'll try to say it one more time. Planning and zoning is responding to the legal requirement to have a plan that can be submitted to the state. It does not include any great specificity like what you're talking about, Maureen.
But this is not a planning and zoning committee meeting. This is not, we can go, we're
you're talking
outside
two
of
different
that.
things here.
no,
Pardon
no,
me? Yeah, I'm not talking about the POCD. I'm talking about hardcore things we can do.
no,
So,
no.
and-
Help the people
We're
in this,
talking about the affordable housing plan.
not affordable, no.
No, she was talking about something different.
If
I
you're
mean,
talking about the land,
no, she was talking about the issue with the apartments, basically.
right, and that was partially addressed in the affordable housing plan, but in great generalities. And if you go on, if you go on to the planning and zoning site and pull up the agendas for the last meeting, there is the draft affordable housing plan in there, and it addresses like 7 items of action, you know, to address affordable housing in town. And it involves looking at the apartments, looking at senior housing, looking at grants to entice builders to come into town to build affordable housing. But it's unfortunately, in my opinion, it's much more of a cookie cutter approach rather than anything that's specifically tailored to Ashford.
Got it.
Maureen, what you're talking about, I think, is not so much a part of an affordable housing plan that Richard's referring to, but rather whether or not Ashford should establish some ordinances that control what rental property it does in town.
Exactly, yes. Yeah.
Ray,
Whether they're
there's a,
livable, whether the apartments
Oh.
are livable or not so much how expensive they are,
Right.
right?
Well,
Exactly.
we're not gonna be able to solve that tonight.
No,
Yeah,
no.
It's
but
a
that's-
good
I
topic.
have another
Worms.
question.
and just as an aside,
I have another,
Ashford is not able to pass ordinances regulating apartments within the city like that. That's simply outside of the purvey of what the town can do.
And
Okay,
where
well-
do you get that from, Richard?
Again, we're going to circle
Okay,
back to this
Okay,
topic for another day.
go to the list of ordinances and see if you can find any that are addressing apartments.
There are none. I have looked at those and there are none. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying ordinances are not necessarily, created in, BC. They're also,
Okay,
they're also
can
vague.
we get back on track?
Okay.
Back on track.
Okay.
Okay.
I have an idea of something else that could be done, and it sort of came up in the through the hearings and the testimony that people made. People talked about trails and the conservation land in our town. And as far as I know, there is no comprehensive, let's call it a booklet that lists all of the trails that are public trails in our town. I think a list would be useful, and I think if any of them are mapped, it would be really nice to have a map, all of this in one place.
I
That is
think
something that
that's-
Conservation Commission has talked about, so.
And it's in one way or the other, it's been done. It's not maybe it's put out as much as it would have been. Mike, help me with the name of the fellow that was championing that.
Steve Moroico.
Not
But-
Steve.
But Nora's talking about packaging it, like, yes, maybe we have all that information, but to go to a single place on the town website or to be able to stop by and pick up a pamphlet with it. EDC has also endorsed this because we think our trails are a big lure for people to come visit Ashford and spend money, that it would be good for businesses. So
I think a majority of our trails are listed in the Joshua's Trust Walk Book and with maps and parking facilities.
Right. There's a lot of resources. I think that would be a great project for a bunch of like-minded people under our town, our future, to kind of pull that together.
Yeah, I agree. Margaret,
Yeah, I
help me with the fellow's name that was doing all that work on EDC. Wakeman, Terry Wakeman.
With Joshua
Terry-
Trust.
Terry is a member of Joshua's, and in fact, I think he's an officer in the organization. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, but he was championing that, and there was efforts to try to put it up on the Visit CT website.
Yep, we could do that. The
Yeah,
town
it's
of
been-
Ashford.
it's been floating out
could
there.
do
I
that.
think it would be great to
That would be a
also
good
have it
effort.
available at the
Bob.
library or available for sale at town hall. It would be like at cost, wouldn't be much.
And that's the kind of thing you can get a little grant for. There is definitely grant monies out there to just, pay a couple $1,000s to create a book like that and print up some copies. So
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we've been talking about. It just takes somebody who wants to champion and lead it and be in charge of it. I think we've had over the years that I know since I've been here, it's been talked about and just it's kind of bounced around a bunch of different places. And there's all kinds of apps now and things where you can upload all that stuff and find that stuff. It's just a matter of directing people to a lot of those as well. But good idea.
Hey, Mike, we've
I will, I will talk to some people that I know, who are interested in hiking and, try to get, a handle on what maps actually exist somewhere already. What maps we might have access to without having to pay for it. And, I'll get back to you next time.
So you're volunteering. I saw your hand go up.
Yep, yeah, Nora, reach out to
Yes.
Terry Wakeman.
Yep.
Because he's been working on that same thing.
Very good.
Okay.
Between Joshua's Trust and the Nipmuc Trail and the public, the Blue Trail systems, I mean, it's
Recreation department.
impressive. Yep, rec department might have some, so I think that would be awesome. That would be such a great thing to market.
And the state has it.
Okay.
Very good. Any other new business anybody wants to talk about? We've kind of kicked around the POCD. It's a 4-letter word by the end of the night here. The input for anybody from the public.
Yep. Mike, good luck to write the minutes of this meeting.
No problem. I keep things brief. So just to summarize, for the next
Right,
meeting.
I'm
go ahead.
as a member of the public.
Sure. Go for it.
A couple of things that have nothing to do with the POCD. I'm sure you're glad to hear that. In your May meeting, the June citizen, you talked about there was one suggestion, writing grants to attack invasive plants. I've talked to some people who had grants to remove invasive plants from properties, but they're really connected to improving timberlands.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that could actually start on town lands. I still think that's a really good idea. And in terms of involving a community activity, it's something that needs a lot of hands. So my input is that's a really good idea, and it's something that could build community. The other thing that I would mention is broadband access. There is a big federal program to promote universal broadband access. There's a state department, a Connecticut state agency that is focused on that. And they are largely involving groups that are seeking out people who don't have access, and organized entities that in towns, especially in the big cities, that are teaching people how to get broadband access, how to work on. And I think it's something that OTOF might think about as something that would improve life here in Ashford. I will admit, full disclosure, I'm very dissatisfied with my broadband, and that's what led me to get to this in the first place.
Yeah,
Welcome
just
to Boston
FYI,
Hollow.
FYI, there is, I know the town is actively involved in that initiative as we speak. You should reach out. Maybe you've already reached out to the first selectman. He could
I have, and the response was really good. I'm suggesting for OTOF that, and I don't know if this is going to work. One thing I think would be useful is to find out, how do you find people who don't have access, since most of our communication is online? And
that's a good question.
That's something that OTOF could think about that, and think about, getting that.
And partnering with our library, you got to figure a lot of those people, if they don't have broadband at home, are coming in and regularly using the library resources in order to gain access. So, they might have a good handle on it as well as our human services people, right? And so there is an opportunity to how do we identify just what is the need here in Ashford. And I know that, again, and I'm sorry, I work for Mansfield, so I know some programs that they're doing, and they've actually just hired somebody with ARPA funds specifically to help people with technological challenges. So just teaching people how to set up an email account or giving them, advice on how to navigate. And he is available to anyone, not just Mansfield residents. So for example, that's a whole resource that you could promote here. It's separate from the broadband thing, but it's part of the technology accessibility issue. But I think that that's an interesting concept.
Well, I know that all the
Right, well-
internet companies know who doesn't have it. So
Oh.
the marketing departments know that for sure. Just about how do you make it affordable, unless you do HughesNet. So,
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Margaret. I'll talk to the folks at the library. That's a good idea.
and again, I know that the first selectman's office has been working on this issue, and and I think that, and obviously there's a great initiative across the whole country just to make it accessible to everybody. So, yeah, it's one of the things. There's a lot of blessings living out in an area like Ashford, but there's also these are some of the drawbacks that we all experience, and it's and the other part of it is that why we need more people to step forward to volunteers, because the invasive things, I can speak to it specifically because I'm doing that on my property right now, and I'm familiar that there are grants out there that town could access that could help on some of these things, but it takes staffing. They have a hard enough time with they have such small staffing, they don't have the people to write grants or even to manage the grants and all that stuff. So again, that's unfortunately is one of the things. It's kind of the drawback, you could say, but it's why we all probably live out here too. It's just kind of the way it is. But there are opportunities out there. I can tell you that for a lot of these things. It's just a matter of being able to access it or have people that can follow through and do it. So it's the challenge.
Now,
But I do see the invasives thing being something that would energize a certain element of our, again, in building community. Like there's a lot of people that would take that to heart and get involved with something like that.
We
So
started, I'll just give you an example, and you can look it up because they've got a following. South Windsor has an invasive group. We just started just before I retired, and it's a group of energized citizens, and they've actually got a plot area that they've been working on. Like they're doing it because they don't want to use the chemicals. They're doing these different techniques, and but you might want to. That's an initiative that could be done with a group of people, but it's like a garden club in a sense, or a group of book reading
reverse gardening.
Yeah, so I will forward to you that link, and it's kind of interesting. But it is an initiative that's town staff, Public Works does help manage it and provide some expertise and things. But it's an initiative that was undertaken by a resident who had a passion for doing something about it. It's a big project, I can tell you that. But I can send you and see how they form that process. They've been doing it now about 4 years now. The group has been together about 4 years, but I'll send you that. It's kind of interesting, but it's along the lines of what you're talking about. But that's what it's going to take out here. So the Public Works Department is not going to be able to do it. Conservation has talked about doing it. It's a big undertaking, but these people are willing to do it. It's just time, time and gloves and a lot of labor. So, any other thoughts? Those are good thoughts. Appreciate it.
No, that's what I have.
Very good.
If anyone, I'm trying to get someone to get rid of my invasive plants in my gardens because I can't garden any longer. So
go get a goat. They work pretty good. We use goats as well. They took care of a lot of.
Unfortunately, the goats will eat my whole garden.
Well, but they'll get rid of the invasives. We got rid of Japanese knotweed that way. And you can rent goats, by the way, in case you're interested.
Well,
Look you up there.
I'm making a stab at a garden design group to come out and
Okay.
fix the mess that I've got. You talk about invasive. I never realized there was so many vines that
Yep.
are invasive.
Yep.
I've got vines climbing up all the side of my house.
Well, on that note, I'm just a summary for what we're gonna do. I'll reach out to Jeff Silversmith again and just kind of bounce the idea about maybe beginning to strategize a group of meetings over the course of say 7 months, 8 months, whatever, with the topic, just a singular topic that can generate some public input that can be ultimately integrated into their work that they're doing. But again, at least we are willing as Our Town, Our Future to facilitate those meetings. And then again, we'll try to coordinate that with what they're doing with our Conservation Commission and their outreach as well with the survey.
Yeah, and Mike, I would advise you not to appear that you want to step up to lead the thing.
No, I'm
Unless
not.
you want to.
I'm dialing things back truthfully, but if there's anybody here that would like to take over Our Town, Our Future, lead this effort, please raise your hand now. Yeah, we'll work on this and try to get this thing moving forward in a positive way. It's critically important to the community, and the more hands, the more input, the better. That's the way I look at it. Any other thoughts, comments anybody has? Other than that, appreciate everybody showing up, spending your Monday evening. Just in time if you're looking to watch any football, I guess it's on here. You won't miss that.
Just as an aside, Wednesday night on ESPN, there's the Minnesota Lynx versus Connecticut Sun.
Okay.
You can watch Dr. Uhas and Lucretia Collier.
Yep. Very good. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Keep smiling. Have a good rest of the week, and
I
enjoy
move
this
to
fall weather
adjourn.
that's finally upon us. Thank you.
I move to adjourn.
Oh yeah, I guess we could stay here all night if you want, but yes, thank you. Second.
Good night, all.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Keep
Good night.
smiling.